Well, this is Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up a racket all night long. It's Common Lawyer Comments, but this is in church. We're in church, INNCHURCH. Let's quit messing around, get to the laws of nature, and then we'll get to the laws of nature's God. Unless you know something of the laws of nature, and the laws of nature's God are common law, lex non scripta, unwritten, and the Bible written. Let's learn it. What we're going to do here, real quickly, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to talk about that solid stepping stone I'd mentioned a while ago. Say, Brent, why'd you talk so much this morning? Didn't get straight to the Constitution of the United States. I'll tell you why. Two reasons. Because if I hadn't said that stuff, I might have bursted. And if I'd have bursted, you wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here next week. Miss Francine, was I on question 80, 81, 82?
81.
81. Thank you very much. This is the Catechism on the Constitution of the United States, the laws of nature, expression of the laws of nature. That's what our Constitution is, a common law document intensely Whiggish to conserve our common law. Printed 1828, Arthur J. Stansbury. Question 81 out of 333 questions. That's what a catechism is, questions and answers that the student learns. Does the journal of the Senate of the United States, show how each member voted in every case that came to be considered? Answer, no. No. Does the journal of the Senate of the United States show how each member voted in each case that came to be considered? No. But if 1/5 of the members present, when any measure is proposed, require that the names of those who voted for and against it be put down in the journal, it must be done. Now, he says it must be done. If 1/5 say, well, we want these votes recorded, 1/5. See, in the United States Senate, if 20 members say, we want these votes recorded, he says they have to record them. Now, let me ask you a question. Let's say that 1/5 of the senators be 20 senators, because there's 100 senators, 2 senators from each of the 50 states. Let's say that 20 of them say, I want these votes on this thing recorded because I want the public to see who the scoundrels are here that voted against it or for it or whatever. Okay, so 1/5 says that. And then the recorders there that are recording the votes and the ones responsible to see that they're put in the journal and printed don't do that. Who's going to make them do it? Who's going to force them to do it? Answer, nobody. Even though the rules say that, just remember, all the fuss and fighting, and they don't follow the rules if they can't make it happen, and they don't. I was involved in a court case once where a federal judge was put up, he threw his hat in the ring to be a federal district judge. Bill Clinton was president. He was a left-wing wacko like Bill Clinton. Terrible, man. Terrible. They called him Maximum Mike. Why'd they call him Maximum Mike? Because no matter what happens, when there was a crime and the jury came back with a guilty verdict, he gave them the maximum of whatever penalty was available under law. Well, and he had a hussy of a lesbian running his office. I'm just giving you the facts. He had all that. And it came to the point where people were fed up, and lawyers were fed up, some defense lawyers, and they said, we want to see your oath of office. The Constitution of the United States requires that you have taken an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against enemies, foreign and domestic. We want to see it. It has to. We know you took it, held your hand up, but it's also recorded in writing according to the requirements of the law. Get it for us. Boy, did they start stepping and fetching. I mean, the whole judicial branch of the federal government could not get that oath, would not send it. Now what? How do you enforce that then? If the Constitution requires it, how do you enforce it? They said, well, we want to see then the congressional record of the United States Senate where they voted to confirm your appointment as a federal judge. Well, they wouldn't provide that either. So they finally got the record, the journal, and we're talking about the journal here in the Catechism of the United States Senate. And they noticed that Carol Moseley Brun, whatever her name was, another left-wing wacko senator, kept making a motion, putting a motion on the floor to bring him up for an up or down vote of confirmation. Well, she could never get a second on the motion. In other words, they didn't want him. They wouldn't even second the motion to bring it to a vote. You got to have a motion on the floor to bring it to a vote, Robert's Rules of Order. Then you got to have a second for the motion. Of course, they don't follow that either. They claim to. A second. They followed it in this case. Okay, now we got to vote on it for confirmation of this new judge. Well, the record, the journal, has all that for days, she made arguments and talked about, he's trying to buy a house, he's up in the air, we should feel sorry for him because we're not bringing it to a vote. And of course, I'm thinking the guy's on the government dole in either case. What do I care whether or not he has a new house? I had a new house once too. And he took it away. He's one of those kind of guys. He'd take houses away and destroy people's contracts. He didn't care. Why do I care about him? Like I say, it's the principle. All these movie stars worth 10, 20, 40, 50, $100 million, living in mansions, burned down. They got the whole country feeling sorry for them. They still got millions in the bank. Should I feel sorry for them? I don't. Why should I? I got folks right in my own circles that I'm worried about. My friends. I'm not worried about a bunch of left-wing. Not all of them, but even if they aren't Democrats, they got it made. They're okay. I don't have to worry about them. Why is it that the media wants to stir us up over them? Because they want us to worship those people, to worry about them, to give our time, attention, and money. Yeah, you're giving your time and your money to them. If you're giving your time and your attention to worrying or thinking about them or watching them, that's money in the bank you're not making. You give your time or attention to somebody you could really help. And only God will give you that. You can't whip that up in yourself. You're going to worship the stars otherwise. You're not going to worship the maker of heaven and earth. I like Mel Gibson. He lost his house. Well, God's used Mel Gibson. I'm not worried about him. That's what God will do for you. He'll bring you home. He'll bring your mind home. He'll turn, I'm quoting the Bible, he will turn the fathers toward their children. That's a big deal, friends. Can you imagine fathers turning their attention toward their children? That's the problem, isn't it? And turning his attention toward his wife instead of being distracted by and wives, instead of them being distracted by aliens. That's all demonic distraction, friends. The Bible talks about such things. The left will do anything to distract you from your mission. What is your mission? This land the Lord your God has given you, and that means it must be populated properly. That means that you turn your attention to your business, your family, your sons, your daughters, your grandchildren, your husband, or God's people in general, locally, the ones you know. If your family's grown, or your husband is gone, or your wife is gone, go local, friends. Who was it? He was a Democrat. He was right. Tip O'Neill, he was very powerful when I was in the game. Tip O'Neill, Irishman from, where was he from? Boston. He was from Southie, wasn't he? Southie, the Irish community in Boston where the Kennedy family was from and all that crowd. They had to congregate together. People didn't want to put up with them, so they could support each other. But Tip O'Neill said this: Everybody in office is a nice guy. You can't get into office without being a nice guy and being pretty clever. It's not that they don't say clever things, that they just doing that to fool people. But Tip O'Neill said this: all politics is local. Well, in his world, politics is government, not in mine. No, politics is Roman law, the law of the city, the law of the polis, the Greek word for city. But he was right about that. All politics is local. I say let's put the common law spin on it and understand it the way us Americans ought to understand it. He was an imperialist. He likes that kind of stuff. And the most important figure in his life was an imperial priest, a government of one man, the will of one man. That's not us. You're an American, you live here on this land. No. Don't blow it, friends. If all politics is local, that's the law of the city. What do we say? All government is local. Well, how local is it? It's right in your house. The family is the most efficient and effective, the most efficient and effective health, education, and welfare institution ever known to man. It matters not. It matters not much what goes on in the White House. It matters not much what goes on in the courthouse, the state house. What really matters, in comparison, what really matters is what goes on in your house, as humble as it may be. Listen to me, friends. Been there, done that. It's a water haul. That means it's a waste. Politics is fundamentally a waste. And the way to overcome politics, the way to overcome false government, is for you to first get yourself straight with your Maker, to confess your sins, to humble yourselves before God. And if you humble yourself before Him, the Bible says He will lift you up and He will use you to overcome the evil empire. But don't go at it yourself. No. And as long as it matters more what goes on in your house, it doesn't matter what goes on anywhere else. There's several Christian groups that have taken that point of view. I don't agree with their other doctrines, some of them, but I appreciate them, and I consider them fellow Christians in many ways, many of them that I've met. And they pay attention to the land, and they pay attention to their families. Noah paid attention to his family, primarily, foremost, to save his family. And God will use you in a more powerful way than if you do anything else. See if we got another question here. Oh, by the way, couldn't find in that journal where that judge was voted up or down. There was a blank place in the column like this, just blank. Never did come to a vote. Then all of a sudden, at the end of that blank, it said this: Judge so-and-so is confirmed. No record of any second, no record of any confirmation vote, but there is a record that the Senate of the United States confirmed this judge. Is that lawful? None of our, if they don't want us to know what went on in there, all we know is it says he was confirmed. We don't have to know the rest of it. That's the way they do it. Did he get the required number of votes? We don't know. We don't know. We just know that the Senate said yes. Well, we're down to question number 82. Question: after Congress has met, may either house adjourn, that is, cease to meet, for more than 3 days at a time without consent of the other house? No. Answer: no. Who's going to enforce that one? It hasn't been tested yet, as far as I know. You see, when you're up that high in the power halls of power, who enforces the law. And up there, the enforcement of the law is given to the militia of the several states as members of juries impaneled. That's final. That's primary, friends. Do you understand your duty, men, as members of the jury in defense of the law of the land? You're the arbitrary deciders. That means you don't have to give reasons as a member of the jury. And then the backup to that is by force of arms to prevent foreign invasion. We had foreign invasion. The hijacking of elections was under the influence of foreign countries at the behest of the Democratic Party. We discovered that in small ways. Their influence is like a snake slithering in under the grass, manipulating, mumbling, murmuring. That's the way of the evil empire, to mumble, to murmur. It's not the way of the evil empire to meet head on the opposition in a fair fight. That may be the way of chivalry of God's men, but that's not the way of the useful idiots of the evil one. They want to create confusion so that they can grab power in the confusion. The Bible said don't even talk to them. For sure, don't say, well, have a good day. Don't even do that. If just a few, a critical mass of God's people would take that point of view and understand what God's law says and what our orders are, we will have effect. I mean, if he tells you to go unload trucks, go unload trucks. If he tells you not to talk to the enemy, don't talk to the enemy. Don't bid them Godspeed. Don't say, have a good day. I read a story. I'm not promoting this war. This war should have never happened, the one I'm going to talk about. It was a product of bankers. We had no stake in it, nothing. Yet thousands of Americans died and won the war for everybody else. That was World War I. The stalemate came in that war in the trenches in France between England and Germany. England, France, allies, and Germany. A stalemate came. Trench warfare had reached a sophistication and a use that had never reached before in the history of man. Miles and miles and miles and miles of trenches across France. On both sides, no man's land in between, and a stalemate for months, years. Germans, a people of a Christian culture. I didn't say they were all Christians. They weren't, of course, but a people of a Christian culture. On the other side were, at that time, this was before the Americans got involved, on the other side were Brits, Englishmen, Scotsmen, Welshmen, Irishmen. I'll include the Irish in there because it's the United Kingdom. Well, that's what it was. Christmas Eve came. It was cold. They were in the trenches. They'd been there for months. Stalemate. No movement either way. Tired of the stupidity. And both sides begin to hear a common familiar tune being sung by the young men in the trenches. I believe it was Silent Night, Christmas Eve. Well, they had a truce, an official truce is the way I remember it. They weren't to fire on Christmas because they were both Christian cultured people, both nations, including the French. They began to sing and they began to join in with each other and sing. And then the next day they came out, exchanged small gifts, chatted in a limited way because they had different tongues, and then played a soccer game in no man's land. Now, put aside for a minute that the war was manipulated by bankers, which it was, no question. They were funding both sides, making fortunes, bleeding countries dry for nothing. Put that aside and say, but this was war. The officer that allowed that to happen on the British side was a Scotsman. I disremember his name. A well-known, respected man. He was court-martialed. They tried to hang him, talking with the enemy, cavorting with the enemy, being kind to the enemy. Is that the way it's supposed to be in war? You bet it is. You don't talk to the enemy. You don't fraternize with the enemy. If it's truly war, same thing happened in Germany. We occupied Germany after the war. The American soldiers were said, you cannot cavort with the German girls, the Fraus. No, no. Or is it Fraulein? Fraulein, right? Fraulein's unmarried. Frau, somebody can tell me. I don't remember. Yeah, Fraulein is under. You're not to cavort with a Fraulein, not to even talk to them. If you do, it'll be a $50 fine. You're certainly not to go to bed with them, and you're not to be marrying them. These are our enemies defeated. That was the rule. Did it do any good? No. What it came down to is we're only going to enforce that rule if we find out you go to bed with one of them. 100,000, I forget how many, astronomical amount of girls came home with the boys, married them. I've even known some of them, Of course, the Americans brought home English girls, Scottish girls, Welsh girls, Irish girls, and German girls and Belgian girls, and we had all that in small degrees. I knew some in our community, and children that were born of those unions. Grew up with some of them. But the point was, if it is truly war and it's truly lawful, you don't talk to the enemy. Do you think it's any less that way with God? Any less? No, his war is just. And we take the just war approach to war. And he says, don't talk to the enemy. Do not, here's the old King James, John speaking in the epistles, the little epistles he has at the end of the Bible, just a couple of a book. There's 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, Jude, and Revelation. That's the end of the Bible. But he says there, do not even bid them Godspeed. One of the things that I've seen, I've tried to stress it here, just the Bible, it oozes. God's people, the way to win the world, the way to deal with the world, the way to defeat the enemy, and to love folk outside Christian circles is to let them come to you. Do not bid them Godspeed, it says. Godspeed, that means good day. I hope things go well for you. Farewell. Farewell? That's a nice way of saying, I hope things go good and say goodbye. Farewell. We take it just mean farewell, but no, it means I hope your going is good. Fair, going, old word. Well means good. Fare thee well. There's the old way we used to say it. Fare thee well and adieu to you, dear ladies. Adieu, well, that's French, but fare thee well is English. Well, just leave them alone. Don't be mean to them. If your enemy is hurting, help him, yeah. But don't be fraternizing. Now, you want to fraternize, you fraternize with God's people. That's what Jesus Christ said. That's what the Bible teaches. And if other people need help, of course, you don't want to just leave people to die. It says, pray for them. It says, if they're hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them a drink of water. But they're not your buddies. They're not your close associates. And that's pretty tough. That's a tough standard, but we're at war, friends. That's what the Bible, God's word requires. Question 83, do the two houses, that is the Senate and the House of Representatives, meet in the same building? Answer, yes. Yes. Question 84, may either house, that's the House of Representatives or the Senate, remove to any other place? Answer, no. Not unless the other house removes too. One house can't say, we're going to meet over here. The Senate stays in the Capitol building. That can only be allowed, it says, our Constitution and our conclusions on the matter, if both houses go and meet in the same place. They are two separate houses. They are two independent and co-equal houses. But there is a process that our common law requires that they operate together. Do members of Congress receive anything for doing the business of the public? Question 85. Do members of Congress receive anything for doing the business of the public? Answer. Their chief and best reward is the honor of serving their country. Their chief and best reward is the honor of serving their country. But as many of them cannot afford to leave their own business so often and so long without having the loss of some measure made up to them, the Constitution says that they shall be allowed compensation to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. Somebody in recent times, was it Ron Paul? I don't remember. Maybe Ron Paul wouldn't take the raise. That was it. They voted to give themselves a raise, and Ron Paul says, I'm not taking it. I am not taking it. Somebody did that. Well, you do that in Congress, you'll be blackballed. Blackball, that's from the Roman days when they used to throw a black or a white ball. That was the way they voted. You throw a black rock in, that means no. A white rock means yes. No, black rock, I don't want this man to be a judge. White rock, yes. That's the way they did it. So to be blackballed means people start voting against you. You become persona non grata. That's fancy, isn't it? You've heard it, persona non grata. That's Latin for an unacceptable person. Your person is no longer acceptable. Your personhood, you ever been persona non grata? That's what they do to people that don't go along with the club and grub every dime they can from the Treasury of the United States and lick it up like a bunch of rabid dogs. 86. Who fixes the rate of compensation? That is, how much the members shall have. Answer. Congress fixes their rate of pay, their rate of compensation. When I ran for Congress back in the 90s, I believe early 90s, I believe it was, and late 90s, I believe it was around $130,000 a year. And that was justified. A lot of congressmen would have a place they could stay in Washington, D.C., of course, and then they're home. Yeah. It takes a lot of money. And of course, they have travel, they're paid mileage. But now it's much more than that, much more. Question, ought they be allowed to fix their own wages? Answer, it cannot be avoided. The rate must be fixed by law, and there is none who have the power to make law for our country but Congress only. Is that true? Yes, that's true. Oh, here's a good one. I'll get to this next time, talking about can you arrest a congressman for debts owed while they're attending Congress to their public duty? Woo! I've known people that have gotten in this one. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. Next time we'll start with question number 88. Well, this is Brent. Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up a racket all night long.